In America, individualism is everything. We mythologize the individual who, through the strength of their own deeds, achieves everything their heart desires. The Bill Gateses, the Tom Bradys, the guy who invented the pumpkin spice latte. We view our society as a meritocracy where everyone, if they only put in enough effort, can shrug off the burdens of lower class life and take their place among American royalty. This rugged individualism is propped up by competition. Competition makes sure that only the best rise to the top. Ricky Bobby once said, "If you ain't first, you're last," a motto taken to heart by many. It doesn't matter how much you cheat or steal or undermine, as long as you are the best. We thrive on competition, in sports, in business, in politics, and especially in education. The academic world is preparation for the real world. As we advance closer to being adults, the classes get harder, the stakes get higher, and the essays get longer. Our system perpetuates the idea that if you want to get the best job, you've got to go to the best college. If you want to go to the best college, you've got to get the best grades. If you want to get the best grades, you've got to study the hardest. The educational system as a whole, and teachers in particular, spend years drilling this idea into students. It starts the moment kids enter school and doesn't let up for years or even decades. Some outcomes are easy to see, like how high school is dedicated to getting you into college. But we get a little bit more creative for younger learners. There are science fairs and spelling bees, argument and debate, and most importantly for this story, reading competitions. The idea of a reading contest is simplicity itself. We foster a love of reading through healthy competition. My school dedicated 2 whole weeks to reading, with special events littered throughout. There would be special read-alouds by parents, we'd have a pajama day dedicated to bedtime stories, and to top it off, the 2 weeks would end with a huge school-wide scholastic book fair, where the top competitors from each grade would be honored with a trophy and a $30 gift card good for anything at the fair, a tantalizing prize for any bookworm. It was called the Battle of the Books. The rules were simple. Whoever reads the most wins. You had to keep track and prove that you actually read the books through simple reading logs. You were allowed to read any book you wanted, provided it was appropriate. The first day they took us to the tiny school library and let us pick some books. There wasn't much that I was interested in. This was a small, very conservative Adventist school. Many books that public school students my age were allowed to read were banned. I decided to raid my father's and brother's bookshelves, as well as having my mom take me to the public library to find books for the competition. There was very little oversight over what we read. The school instead relying on our parents to censor books that may have been inappropriate. My mother took a rather laissez-faire approach to what I was reading, doing a cursory inspection of the cover to determine whether or not it was okay. I left the library with many books that would have horrified my teacher. One of them about a priest on a cross-country bike ride, doing many unpriestly things, luckily to consenting adults, with several instances of literary smut. I was smart enough to leave that out of my reading logs. There was also a series of books about a Muslim assassin that were full of violence and religious warfare that had Christians being ousted from America by Islamic terrorists. In preparation for this video, I looked everywhere for these books, but I couldn't find them anywhere. It almost feels like I dreamed them up, a misty memory of an imaginative child, but they were real. The raid on my dad and brother's bookshelves also yielded fruit. One of the best books was The Ultimate Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. It was super thick and was made of the 5 small novels of the series. It was hilarious, and if my Christian school had known that that was what I had been reading, they would have been so mad. I think I was hooked from this line. Orbiting this at a distance of roughly 92 million miles is an utterly insignificant little blue-green planet whose ape-descended life forms are so amazingly primitive that they still think digital watches are a pretty neat idea. During the competition, I would get lost in a spacey sci-fi blur of towels, babelfish, two-headed men, infinite improbability, and, of course, the meaning of life, the universe, and everything. Once I had all my books together, it was time to start reading. My friend Mark and I had decided to make a $20 bet over who would win the competition. With money on the line, the two of us got reading. Neither of us knew the Herculean competition we had entered. The first night was slow for me, only reading 50 pages. I came to school, pleased with myself, to find that he had read 100 pages. I was pissed and determined to beat him. I read during every available second at school, during recess and lunch, and even in class. I read for 3 or 4 hours once I got home and ended the night with an impressive 250 pages. I came to school the next day and found that I had tied the game with about 300 pages apiece. It was Mark's turn to get pissed. The next few nights were a blur of pages from dawn till dusk. To supplement my reading, I was even getting up an hour early to get some done before school. We went back and forth, the number of pages swelling every day. The whole class was amazed with us. The competition was a 2-week-long affair, and it broke us down. The long nights and early mornings began to wear on me. Mark seemed unaffected by the pace. I was keeping up, but the cost was immense. There were several more trips to the library, each more frustrating than the last. Any time not spent reading was burned daylight. It was amazing to me that he never seemed to tire. When we reached 500 pages per night, I became demoralized. There was no way he could do this seemingly without effort. I was suspicious. He had been cheating, right? The temptation to cheat began to weigh on my mind. If he was doing it, then why shouldn't I? In the end, my integrity won. I remember the night before the results were to be released. It was 3 a.m., and I had just finished a book that left me at 550 pages. Certainly, that would be enough. I didn't want to start a new book. I was so tired. I went to bed and slept fitfully for a few hours before it was time to get up. At this point, I was the zombie. I marched my way into school and turned in my final reading log. Neither of us would disclose how much we read the night before. Eventually, night fell and the book fair commenced. There were little readings and speeches and announcements, and finally the time came to announce the winner. They started with the first graders and glacially worked their way up to the main event, the 8th graders. At this point, the whole school had heard of our competition. Mark and I were so excited to hear the winners, mainly because it meant that we could take the weekend off and get some much-needed sleep. A trill of excitement ran through the crowd as they began the reveal with third place. Then it happened. In third place, with a whopping 4,957 pages, we have Chris Stewart. A silence fell over my 8th grade classmates, and my heart dropped into my stomach. In second place, with 5,013 pages, we have Mark McCauley. Although I felt like someone shat in my ice cream sundae, the look on his face was priceless. The two of us stared agog as they announced the winner, Jennifer. Unbeknownst to us, she had been waging a similar campaign completely under the radar. While Mark and I were caught up in petty blustering about who would win, Jen had been reading. She ended the competition with 5,091 pages. I was devastated. All of that work for just a third place ribbon. The one bright spot was because Mark didn't win, I didn't lose the bet. I never did learn if Mark had cheated, but I have no doubts that Jen had not. I was beaten fair and square. It was a lesson in humility and of accepting defeat with poise. I congratulated her, shook Mark's hand, and went home and slept. Although I was tired, heartbroken, burned out, and sad, I had to admit that it was a great 2 weeks. I look back on that competition as the birth of my love of reading. I learned so much about myself and how strong I was. While I've never come close to matching that performance, I still read every night. If you ask me whether I would run a competition like this for my students, I think I would. Would I recommend this for all students? Again, yes. America is built on competition. I think this is an amazing way to encourage reading. I think it can help gamify reading and engage students who may not be big readers into falling in love with books, especially if you have a great prize for the winner. Today, literature is at the bottom of the barrel in terms of entertainment. Getting students into reading is more important than ever for their success. I proposed the contest not as a standalone thing, but as part of a larger, multifaceted approach to youth literacy. We need to do everything we can to wrench our students away from their phones. We need to make reading fun again. But I implore you to heed my word. When you run your own battle of the books, make sure third place gets a prize. Thank you.